2/3 of real estate agents are women, and only 1/3 are nationally recognized coaches.
Well, we got to figure out why. What is driving this, right?
Yeah.
So we went out and we talked to literally hundreds of women. You know, what is getting in the way of this? And there were 3 answers that came up all the time.
Welcome back. I'm Jess'd and we're here with this Jess'd In. I'm here with my beautiful co-host, Elise Santani. And we have some amazing guests today, Danielle, Wilkie, and Heather Frick. They just started a business called the Helm that I'm so excited to talk about today. But really, to just start off the conversation, 2/3 of real estate agents are women, and only 1/3 are nationally recognized coaches.
Yeah.
Which is so fascinating.
Isn't it?
Yes.
It's fascinating. In fact, when we tell people who are not from real estate this stat, they don't believe us. You know, they're like, no. You know,
there's
all
no way.
Real estate agents are women. Aren't all coaches women? How is this possible? But it is. It's actually possible. And, you know, we went out and verified this. We took a look at all these different top lists that are published every year in the industry. And we added it all up and we're like, wait a minute, where are all the ladies?
Yeah.
We went and looked at the Swanepoel 200. Not a single female coach is on that list either. So you just think to yourself, gosh, there's a lot of opportunity. So we went and we started thinking, well, we got to figure out why. What is driving this, right?
Yeah.
So we went out and we talked to literally hundreds of women. You know, what is getting in the way of this? And there were 3 answers that came up all the time, consistently. The first was that I just don't know how to do it. There's like a confidence gap. And you see this, and there have been studies on this outside of real estate, but just in corporate world overall, where men will apply for jobs where they like are 60% qualified and women apply for jobs where they're 100% qualified because there's this idea that like, I got to know what I'm doing before I do it. And so this confidence gap just keeps women from even taking a step into coaching because they just want to do it well, you know?
Yeah.
The second thing is that a lot of these women, the women who should be coaching, women who have deep experience in the industry, have been doing this for 20 years, 10, 20 years, they all have successful businesses. And so they're like, I don't know, do I have to give up my income to be able to do something like this? Which we were like, that's not really true. Like you can get into this world and not have to give up that revenue. And then the third, this one will blow your mind. This one like always gives me goosebumps every time I hear it, is that these women would say to me, you know, Danielle, the industry's been so good to me, really good to me. I feel like I should just give away this expertise for free. Like every time. And every time I would just about fall out of my chair and then I would get myself together and I would say to them, well, the men don't. They charge for it.
Right.
And by the way, why can't you do both? Why can't you give some things away for free? And why can't you charge for your expertise? So there's like this self-worth thing.
Yeah, there's like a value thing.
Yeah. So we saw this, and these are the themes all the way through. And I thought, well, we can solve those. Those are things we can solve, right? Like we can't solve everything, but we can solve those. And so that was when we were like, let's get going. Let's like do something about this. Let's make sure that we're bringing more women into coaching in real estate. Let's make sure that they're continuing to grow and be successful in it. And we believe that there's room for everybody.
Yeah. So how does it work? So I want to coach. Let's say I want to coach. How would that look?
So we have a couple different ways to help you. So if you're just getting into it, we have a coaching Kickstarter program where we take women who have at least 10 years of experience in the area they want to coach to, right? So the qualification here is if you're a brokerage leader and you've never sold real estate, you can't coach agents. Like that's just not going to work, right?
Yes.
So you have to have done the thing that you are coaching to for at least 10 years. And then we come in and they can run through a 90-day workshop that we teach with a bunch of other coaches and other women who have already started their businesses, including work we've done.
Yep.
And then we help them just get out the door, just launch. And we both come from a tech background. So our take on how you get launched is not go and spend a ton of money on a CRM and a fancy website and before you even realize if this is what you want to do.
Yes.
It's the 0 to 1. How do I just get started?
Out there.
Yes.
Just
and do you
out.
find that that's a big misconception that people think that they need to have it all figured out before they even put their toe in?
Well, and I think the market is training them to think that.
Yes.
Right? Like you need this fancy website. You need all these systems and tools. You need a team. You need a big spend budget on marketing and advertising. And you don't. Like Danielle and I both come from backgrounds of like multiple startups and kind of that scrappy entrepreneurial spirit, building, testing and learning.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're trying to bring is like, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to invest your life savings into this.
Right.
You can just test it.
Yeah.
Just get started. Just try something. 90 days. Like we're going to help you kind of walk through it and step into it. We call it a Kickstarter program because it's meant to kickstart. If you come out of this and you're like, I don't actually love this. Great. You haven't invested everything.
Exactly.
Right? It's just like, let's try it. Let's try something new.
Right.
And if you really feel energized and this is the thing that you want to keep doing, then we will keep helping you. Right.
Yeah.
Then we will talk about, great. Well, what's the next level, in your maturity into this space?
Mm-hmm. So you'll be with people. So you do the Kickstarter and then you can kind of coach them along the way as they grow and scale their business, right?
Yep.
That's the thought.
That's right. Exactly. Okay. So it's not like it just drops off. If you want to keep going, we're putting together groups where we're letting coaches work together. I mean, the mastermind's been around in real estate forever, right?
Agreed.
But where's the mastermind for women coaches?
Nowhere.
Well, there's not. Well, apparently, there isn't one.
There isn't one. There isn't
Until
one.
now.
So we're using tools that we have learned from our other worlds to bring into this to help women come together. Because we ultimately think that the only way this works is if that we are helping each other. We are not competitive.
Right.
This idea that there is enough for everyone is really important. So, Heather and I, the story we talk about all the time is we may both be really, really into conscious leadership. That's like a coaching fundamental that we love. But Heather's experience, lived experience, is so different than my lived experience that the people who want to work with Heather are going to be very different than the people who want to work with me. And so we just believe that there's enough for everyone. And so let's put everyone together. Let's share. Let's figure out how we can help each other grow. And then we all grow together.
I love that.
Yeah.
We've talked about this idea of, we call it your coaching DNA, right? Like what is unique to you, right? You might all come from real estate, but that might be the only thing that's the same, right? You have different personality and a different zone of genius and a different tool set and a different just essence, right? That DNA, that total package is what we help people identify.
Wow, that's cool.
Position, right? Go to market with. And then to Danielle's point, that's not going to stick for everyone, but you find your niche, right? Like you find those people that want that DNA, that resonates with, and that feels really cool. Authentic with, right? And so I think, this idea of abundance is just it's a shift, especially what we've witnessed in real estate. Like there is enough for everyone. Everybody can win.
Yes.
And it can all come together in a community where right now it lives sort of inside of brokerages, right? And coming together into one place where everybody can get that shared experience and support and kind of lift each other up.
And what a great time, because there's so much uncertainty, right? So much uncertainty in real estate.
I love it.
Right?
I love uncertainty.
Yeah. Do you love uncertainty?
I love it so much because it's just opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. Oh my God, if you can just let it be, it can be so much, right?
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that we were looking at all the macro trends that were going on in the industry and beyond as we were thinking about this business and the right way to approach it. And one of the big drivers was
the uncertainty.
The uncertainty. It's like, because that's when new brands, new businesses, new models are created that frankly probably there's a need for them. There's a little room. When I first got to real estate, I remember listening to a talk by Mike Del Pratt, I think is his name, the one in Boulder. And he said this. He said, real estate moves really, really slowly, but it has never moved this fast. And I have never forgotten that quote because I think it did move really slowly, but it is accelerating in a way that is really exciting if you let it be. You know?
That perspective is so interesting to me because you choose to view it that way as exciting.
Totally.
But I think that a lot of people out there are not viewing it. There's lots of fear, right? And so I'm curious about how people really need coaching right now.
Yeah.
Right? Like with all the uncertainty and the fear and the, people have talent, but they don't know how to evolve with all this different evolution in the industry. Yeah. Right. And so having somebody be able to lead and guide them
in a different kind of way too, by the way, because one of the things, and I'll let Heather talk about this in a second, but one of the things that we identified was that if you look around, it's been sort of the same thing for a really long time. You all know the names. I don't have to say them. Like when you think about who are the people who've been coaching in this industry, go pull Inman's top 25 coaches of 2024.
Right.
It's all
Like
men.
it's a lot of
And
men.
they're like the same.
And it's the same men who have been doing it for years and years and years. And by the way, some of them are great.
Yeah,
like
agreed.
some of them are really, really good at what they do. But I just think that when you see something like that, that tells you that there's an opportunity to shift. Things are shifting, the industry's shifting. You know, why are we doing it the same way we've always done it? Like, are there other perspectives? And to Heather's point, this is where we came in because when I saw that this was all happening in real estate and these other trends that were going on, I called her and I said, listen, like there's something here. Like there is an opportunity for real estate to like really level up.
Yeah.
For two women who come from tech, a lot of the questions we get oftentimes is like, what are you doing in real estate?
Yeah.
Really? Like, what are you doing in real estate? Why? Because there's this perception for folks outside of this, there is not enough professionalism. Like, we need to be, like, what's really going on there? And we just haven't, as an industry, done ourselves any favors here.
Yeah.
We just haven't, it's not, and by the way, there are many, many amazing, very professional, very capable people in this industry, but those aren't the ones that are often held up. And so we were like, gosh, what if we could change the coaching approach so that we are bringing in sort of a new perspective, a new way of doing this that really helps the industry do what it's wanted to do for years, which is level up, like show up as professionals in a totally different way. It just seems like an opportunity.
Yeah.
You know?
Especially in this world where, like what you said, Jess, of this, all people will perceive all this transformation or can from a place of fear, right? And so this idea that, oh my gosh, this is all happening to me,
Yes.
instead of, well, what if we could shift you? Like it's happening by you. Can you actually become a creator of your experience?
Or
Right?
for you.
Yeah.
Or for you, and like, or through you. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just like the
That's cool.
so much of the ethos of what we're trying to bring in. And as you get more senior, what we've both witnessed in our careers, and you guys have seen this in your leadership, I'm sure, as women especially get more senior in their roles, it's less about you mastering a functional area, right? I don't need another coach to tell me right now how to get my job done, right? Like how to get my to-do list done or how to, build my CRM. I mean, at this point in the career, it's actually almost entirely about me leading myself. Like, how do I actually
so true.
show up?
Oh my
And so you
gosh.
flip the scales, right? Earlier in your career, it's all about doing and learning and like executing. And can I become a master of this thing, right? Like, can I become a great real estate agent in this world? And as you move forward, and we're starting, we've got some really great coaching programs going on with women who've been doing this for 30, 40 years, some of them. It's like, oh, it's not what I'm doing. It's actually all these behaviors and these beliefs that these behaviors are rooted in that I've just been totally unconscious of for my entire career. And they're coming up in all kinds of areas, and I'm stressed and I'm burnt out, or I'm not connected, and I'm just not great. I'm not happy. And so we're bringing some of these tools into that world to help them kind of operate from that place, right? Of trust and openness and curiosity versus that fear and like, ooh, this is all happening to me.
Wow, that's fast. And it's such a great time.
It's
just
the perfect time.
Yeah.
It's the perfect time.
It's the perfect time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many other things happening. We were looking at trends like the creator economy is growing. Look at all of us sitting right here having a conversation, right? I mean, billions and billions are being funneled into that world beyond real estate right now. I mean, that's going to be 5x from 2021 to like 2025, 26. And in real estate, what does creator mean? It's like almost the equivalent of like running your business these days.
Yeah.
And that's part of how people are doing it. So the creator economy is growing and more people have access to expertise in ways they didn't before. Brokerages continue to reduce the investment they're making relative to coaching and development because their margins are getting squeezed. So that more of that gets outsourced. So then agents and other folks have to go find it for themselves. You are seeing all the stuff we've been talking about, changes in the industry and what's going on. I mean, you just look at all of it. It's all just converging, into this opportunity to do something different.
Yeah. I want to go back, Heather, to you said leadership of yourself, because it's something that resonates. So I run a team of 10, and we are in the mortgage industry in 2024. So I'm sure you can imagine. I know you're not in real estate necessarily, but been pretty stressful, right? And I've been in it now 20 years. And I'm definitely having to lead myself. Like that has to be my constant focus is that. And the mindset, and it's the beliefs, and it's like I'm really having to lean into myself a lot. So I'm curious, walk me through what that looks like in terms of like working with a coach and learning how to, what are some of the principles that you can share with us?
Yeah. So you've heard us use this term conscious leadership a couple times. And really what we mean by that is that is a body of work, it's a set of tools, that there's a Conscious Leadership Institute, there's a book, and it's not dogmatic at all. It pulls from all kinds of different sort of psychology and philosophy and Buddhism to an extent. But the way that we think about defining it is leading yourself, so operating from a place of choice and presence instead of compulsion, right? So you are actually, and the word leadership sometimes throws off, especially in real estate. Well, Danielle informed me early on, like there's some connotation around leadership, and what does that actually mean? We define leadership as creating the reality that you want to see in the world, right? You're the owner and creator of your experience, whether or not it's a great experience or not a great experience, right? And so, when someone starts working with us, when someone starts working with me individually as a coach, it's really getting to know you first, right? What are the underlying motivations? What are the behavior patterns? Why are you operating the way that you are? Most people come to me or come to Danielle because they're like, oh, this isn't working, right? I'm too stressed, or I've got all these problems on my team and I can't figure it out, or, oh, I just want to get rid of my team and I don't want to have a team. And I, we hear that too. And instead of going into solving that mode, we stop and say, let's just really get to understand why this is happening. Yeah. What is it about you? And this is the very provocative question that people sometimes get angry with me when I ask. They'll say, God, this team sucks. I just I can't stand, my operations person is a nightmare. And I keep hearing that over and over. And I'm like, how's that going for you? What about that is working for you? How is it serving you to have a team that is not performing? And they're like, it's not serving me. And I'm like, great. Tell me more about that. Well, as a human, we don't do things unless there is some benefit to it for us. And the issue is that most of the time, 99% of the time, unless it's something wonderful, like we're going on vacation, it's unconscious to us why we do it, right? So the things we complain about are actually things that we're creating subconsciously because there's some benefit to us. And so we talk about why. For Danielle and I, we are high achievers and we love to do things and tick things off of our to-do list. And we will often complain about feeling overwhelmed, right? And so, so then we'll check oh yeah, it feels really good. There's a part of me, it feels so good to feel overwhelmed because this one part of me just gets to feel like I'm nailing it in life. My to-do list is just so crossed off, right? And I can just feel like an all-star because I'm just getting all the gold stars and checking all the boxes. And yet there's another part of me that's totally exhausted and wants to take a nap, right? And so just becoming aware of oh, there are probably all kinds of other places in my life where that, we call it an unconscious commitment to overwhelm, is popping up.
What is a female real estate agent? What's the overall feeling of a female agent in today's market? When you're talking to them and interacting with them, how are they feeling? Because we went from COVID, where we were running real hard, into a really hard market where we're running real hard. So
not going anywhere.
Yeah, this is tough. It's quick. It just feels like mud. I think people are just I think all of us could speak to this, regardless of real estate or beyond. But the last 4 or 5 years, especially if you were somebody with a family, you run a business. You're living through just the intensity of everything that has been going on. I don't think that's unique to women in real estate. I think that's, right. I think real estate has been especially challenging for sure. But I think that what we're hearing is I'm kind of just exhausted.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted. And I really just want to be around people and in spaces that see me.
Yeah.
That get it.
Yeah.
It's I have to be on, especially in real estate. I have to be on all the time. I am the brand.
Yeah.
Right? And then you're like, I need some safe spaces where I can go and not be on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this exhaustion and then just like this loneliness despite being around people.
Yes.
Right? It's like I'm around a lot of people and you know, there's so many retreats and there's so many events and there's so many offsites. But to Danielle's point, they're just on, right? This ability to be vulnerable and just be really fully known is hard.
Yeah.
And it's especially if you're in the same market or you're in the same, you know, space, and that's potential competition in people's minds. And so creating that environment where it is safe to be fully revealed and just like, this is me entirely, and share what's working and what you're scared of. We call it like sharing your 5%, right? What are the edge cases? Like most of us just talk about the middle of the curve, right? Oh, it's great, family, you know, we're fine, business. But like, are we really talking about the things on the edge?
Yeah.
The like really bad things or the really good things?
Yeah.
Not usually.
No, it's
right?
the whole social media effect of like, put on your perfect smile and your perfect background and your
Totally.
perfect everything. And it's a lie. That's
a lie.
not real. That is 0% of that is real.
Yeah, it's a lie. Yeah, yeah. So I think, you know, everything Danielle said about exhaustion, loneliness, and to the point about why women, I just was having a great conversation with an agent last week about this, and she said, well, are you only letting, you know, women into the Helm? And I said, right now, you know, our goal is to get more women into coaching because of the stat that we talked about. That might change over time, as we've talked about. Those coaches can go coach whoever they want. In fact, I would love for them to be coaching men, right? So our coaches are not just only coaching women. They're coaching, you know, everybody.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's a really important distinction to make, is just getting more women into coaching to feel confident, to have the industry be represented in that way, and we'll see what happens. And they can go spread their, you know, their genius out into the world with whoever they want.
Yeah. What do you think about, we live in a world where we have all of these celebrity real estate agents who then write a book and go on a tour.
This is the creator economy, girl.
Yes. And so we're telling the entire United States how to sell real estate because we were on a reality show.
Yeah.
So now we're a coach.
There's going to be more. We
Right.
tell
Oh,
everybody,
yeah.
like, everybody's going to be a coach in the next 2 years.
Yes.
Literally everyone.
Yes. And just because you can doesn't necessarily mean that you should be a coach. It's like just because you're good at sales doesn't mean that you should be the sales manager, right? So how is all of this, what's your opinion on all of that?
More power to her.
Yeah.
Like, if that's what people want,
Yeah.
go, then great. She should do
Yeah.
it, you know? Like, I think, like, the reality is, like, there's not a lot of judgment in this. I mean, I think I'd like to give humans credit. Like, they're smart people. They figure things out. They find
Yeah.
the things that are right for them.
Yeah.
There might be some people who that's exactly what they want, because
Yeah.
deep down, what they want is to be on a TV show
Yeah. Yeah.
and, like, have their own book.
Or learn about branding or
Learn
whatever.
about-
Yeah.
like, great, like, go for it, you know? I think that's not the people that
Yeah.
would probably be interested in what we have
Yeah.
to say, because we're targeting people who like actually take this business really seriously,
Right.
and like want to grow it and want to see the bar raised. So, you know, more, that's what I have to say.
Yeah.
I will say this just from more of a business perspective. I think that what happens there, we go in cycles around long tail and then aggregation. This is true in many, many different business models, where people be like, there's only a couple choices. And then everyone's like, now there's a million choices. And then everyone's like, now we need only a couple choices.
Yeah.
Like, it just kind of goes
Yeah.
in this cycle.
Yeah.
And so right now we're in a cycle where we're going to develop a really long tail around coaching. That's what's going to happen when everybody's a coach over the next 2 years. And so what's going to happen after that is then we're going to like teeter back to like, well, how do we know anyone's any good? How do we qualify people? How do we find people? That's when aggregators come back in. So we are, in our minds, getting ahead of this, because what we want to do is create a place where when there are a million, where do I go? And how do I know I can trust them? That's what we're building.
I love that.
Right? So, you know, to each their own. But
Yeah. And if you're thinking about getting into, because I'm thinking about, I don't want to get into coaching, but if I was, I would probably think, how do I know that someone's going to pay for this? Like,
Totally.
I feel like I would second guess myself. And I would imagine that a lot of women second guess themselves because it's just what we do. It's how we're wired. And we think like, do I really know what I'm talking about? I think I do. And who would ever pay to talk to me, you know?
Yeah.
So how do you get around that?
I mean, I think that's really common. I wasn't immune to that. I think Danielle, like I've personally experienced that too.
Yeah.
And so I think part of our Kickstarter is actually helping women see like you do have something valuable to bring to a market, not the whole market, but there are people that will want to learn from you. And how do we not just focus on your content, but then the context of your confidence and your beliefs and your energy that you're putting out there, and, sort of that Venn diagram of where those two meet is your secret sauce, right? Like, and just getting women to experiment. Like it's just that 0 to 1, right? Because I think especially as women who are high achieving, you start to move from 0 to perfect. And you think, well, that's just too hard. And I have to be perfect. So if I'm not going to be perfect, then why do it anyway? Right. And so it's just like, actually, the opposite of that story could be true, right? The less perfect you are, the more you might attract, right?
Yeah.
The more real, the more messy, the more authentic, the more just sort of like even irreverent in some cases, like you may actually attract people who want that.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think a lot of our work and our tools is getting people to just start to create a little space between that closely held belief and the other side of that, which is like, oh, maybe there is something here, right? And just beginning to, one step at a time.
There's been a solution to this for years in real estate, by the way. Like the solution has been that women who you describe go and work for
the men.
Because they've created ways to solve for this. We'll teach you how to do this. We'll send you the leads. And we'll take 50% of every. So you basically just work for me. You spread my playbook. You do my thing, and then I take your money. So people are like, well, that's an easy way to get into coaching, because then it's like, if I don't like it, it's low risk. It feels safe. So I mean, I think that's how it's worked for a long time. And what we're saying is like, it doesn't have to work like that. Like you can actually go yourself and give this a go. You don't have to do this for somebody else.
And the result of the market is that then you just get just this like cookie cutter, right? Like. So there's a benefit in that it's consistent and scalable from a business perspective. I completely understand why they're building the model like that. The cost to the market is that you have way less diversity. The perspectives start to just get really narrowed around a couple core things. And we're saying, no, actually, the world, we call this idea of zone of genius, like the world needs your zone of genius. It's the thing that you are uniquely gifted at. It's the thing that you were probably born with and you walk around carrying, and other people see it and it's hard for you to see. But it's like, it's your light, right? And you can't have that scaled into the world if you go work for one of those guys, right? It could just be harder. It could work. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's just not as, it's not as easy, and likely you won't sort of step into your full, aliveness and success that way.
When you talked earlier about feeling lonely and, isolated, and I would argue maybe like depressed, like I think that that's how some women are feeling, right? And so I think that that's the lack of using your zone of genius to serve humanity, right? And so what you're doing is really special because you're helping people connect with that. So that they can feel fulfilled, which is neat. It's really neat.
One of the tests that we like to, your genius is hard to identify, like I said. And one of the tests is, does it actually energize you? Does the thing that you're doing, it's sort of like a flow state, right? I don't know the last time that any of us were in a flow state, but sometimes it's you're doing
a flow state,
like where time is actually standing still, right?
Okay.
It's the thing that you're so good at, and it's filling you with energy. You don't even know that it's happening sometimes because you're just not even conscious to it, right? It's like, I love the moments when I'm like riffing and whiteboarding with Danielle, and we're just like ideating, and it's rapid, and time literally goes by instantly, right? And so genius for her and I is like rapid ideation, right? And that's a part of our genius. But we help some of these women get, like, there are tools to help you identify, well, what is the thing that not only I'm uniquely gifted at, but also energizes me? Because you can be really good at something. Like in corporate America, I'm really good at like putting a board presentation together. Really great. right? And that's a zone of excellence for me. It's not genius. And the difference is that it does not energize me. In fact, it depletes me. And so just the act of auditing your life, taking inventory of what are the things, and I'll do this with my clients, like thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral on your calendar, every single meeting that you have on your calendar for 1 week. And where does that trend? What is the trend line? Are you trending up? Or are you trending down? And just managing, if you kind of think about this, of just like managing your energy. Where are you feeling energized versus depleted?
Yeah. So what do? You can't get around the things that are going to deplete you 100%. So do you have any tips or tricks for things to do to help manage that?
Zone of incompetence. So this is all based on the work of Gay Hendricks and the Hendricks Institute. And so he wrote this amazing book called The Big Leap, which I have all of my clients read. And it talks about this idea of zone of genius. And he identified these 4 zones. So incompetence, competence, excellence, and genius. And incompetence is like, oh God, I'm just terrible at that thing, like accounting for me, right?
Same.
Right? And so outsource. You just like, to the extent we privilege, to the extent you are able to outsource that, right? And there are so many people who are like, well, I should keep doing that. It's a really great flag if you're shitting on yourself, like you know that you should probably change that.
Right.
But outsourcing and incompetence, when you're in competence, you're like, I'm okay at that. But it's not really energizing. Yeah. Again, try to outsource or hack, like create really good like shortcuts, workarounds, ways that you can automate things. Excellence this is the trickiest one because we spend most of our high achieving women spend most of your time in excellence, right? It's like, you get this dopamine hit, you get the gold star because you're doing really well. You're getting promoted for it. You're getting more clients around it. It's actually not fulfilling you, right? It's like my board slides example. Or like data visualization. I'm good at that, but I'm like, ooh, if someone told me I had to do that for the rest of my life, I'd like probably not be that psyched about it, right? Yeah. And so it's like this idea of, can you just move that 1 degree, right? And so it's not all or nothing. Could I let like 10% of that go? Could I step 10% out of that thing? And so I will work with clients. We'll talk to our cohort about this idea of like, could you just say no to that 1 meeting? Could you have the person on your team, you're so good at the first meeting on listings, for example, right? We have some agents that are talking about this, like so good at it, a zone of excellence. And it's not genius because it's not fulfilling her anymore. Yeah. But there's fear, right? It's like, well, if I let that go, what's going to happen? Am I going to fail? So there's fear of stepping out. And it's like, we're not saying to do it all the time, but would you be willing to bring your teammate on, your partner in, just for this one? Yeah. Just to experiment. Yeah. To see how it goes. Are you willing? Yeah. And it's not telling him that he's now the person that's doing it every time. And then so it's just stepping into it that way and, helping identify, like, it's not all or nothing. It could be a test. Yeah. And then paying really close attention to what happens, right? What happens in your body? What are the thoughts, the feelings, the body sensations that are flowing through you? Like, you'll know instantly if that was a good decision or not.
Yep.
So, okay, you're a highly producing real estate agent. You're a little bit over it. You're like, okay, I have my team. I kind of want them to take the wheel, but you're terrified because you're like, it's always been me. What if people don't work with me anymore?
I am the brand.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
that's it.
How do you conquer that fear? What do you do to prepare to kind of hand the wheel over? What are all the steps?
We actually work with several women who meet this exact
criteria. Program around this right now.
Like we have someone who meet this exact criteria. I think there's a couple things. When we talk about it, one, it should not be this like, turn it on, turn it off.
Right.
Like the problem is, I think a lot of people get to the end of their wit's end, and then they make really dumb decisions. Yeah. But they're just like, I am done.
It's reactive.
Yeah. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah.
And so I think when some women we work with, it's about figuring out what's your plan here. What's your plan? Like, how can we start to lessen some of that pain today and like step into what it is you want it to be tomorrow? We actually, there's one of our founding coaches, this incredible woman named Elizabeth Convery, and she runs a 10-person team out of Philadelphia, but she lives in Washington, D.C.
And she has a thriving coaching practice.
Wow.
and she's building a thriving coaching business.
Good for her.
So, where she's orchestrated has been like, she still meets with her team on Mondays. She's stepped out of mostly selling. So she's got all of her time is just managing the team and then building her other business, but she's there all the time. She's basically turned herself into a coach of her own business.
Cool.
Yeah.
While also developing her own coaching business, which I think is, if you think about it, like
pretty genius.
We need that in the world. We actually need it. Like some people are like, oh no, I can't step back. What am I going to do when I'm doing? It's like, well, no, like we need you to coach these people so they can be, I think it's one of the coolest things in real estate and having teams is this opportunity.
But prior to doing that, prior to this woman in Philadelphia stepping away, I would imagine that she had to kind of pick a person to say, okay, you're going to be the one running
She
shop.
has an excellent director of operations.
Yeah.
Like the thing is a lot of these women have actually built the systems already.
Yeah. They're just not using
It's
them.
actually a lot of what Heather's talking about, which is like, how do you change your mindset about it? The systems are in place. The ops person runs it. The team is doing great.
Yeah.
Like you step in and you're tweaking a little bit here and there, but you're really not in the business.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you change your mindset around what this is and what it means to me and how I do it? It's scary. I think it's really scary too when you don't know what's on the other side.
Yeah.
Right. So we've been working with a bunch of women this year around just like, how do you figure out what is on the other side of that?
So you get excited
So
and
that
it pulls you.
exactly, because you only change when the vision is strong enough or the pain is high enough.
Yeah.
And so if you can do a better job of creating that vision, then you can work your way toward the outcome.
I mean, that's part of the early work that we do with everyone. If you don't know, I mean, in my individual practice, in our practice with the Helm, in our cohort of women, if you can't tell me, even in the beginning of like a 6-month engagement or a Kickstarter, really what your vision is for the next, 2-3 years, and tell us from the standpoint of, what are you doing? Like, what is the movie scene of your life in 3 years? Yep. How are you feeling? How are you spending your time? It doesn't have to get really tactical, but like if I were to step into the movie of, Danielle Wilkie's life in 3 years, tell me about what's happening, you know? And so we are really intentional about having women define that. And that can change over time, but at least start with something. How are you feeling? What might you be doing? If there were no guardrails, if, finances were not a thing, like what is the just sort of complete, unrestricted, wish list?
Yeah.
And then we sort of unpack, well, what's getting in the way there? What are all the beliefs that you have that are holding you back? I'm not good enough. My brand won't, right? Like one of the really common things we hear is, oh, well, if I stepped back, like people just wouldn't, respect me as much, or, my team wouldn't value me as much. Like, this narrative that like, what will they think if I do this, right? Out there really matters more than what's in here, sort of the rest. And there's this turnaround. One of the tools in conscious leadership is around curiosity, right? It's like, what if your belief, your story that you're making up, because these are all stories that we just assign meaning to these data points in the world. What if the opposite of that was as true as your story? Mm-hmm. What if actually your team respected you more if you left? And then we kind of have them go through an exercise of, okay, can you identify 3 pieces of evidence where that could be true? Like, just give me some examples. And they'll say, oh, well, it's interesting because last year I took a sabbatical for a month and everything was fine. And they actually were like thrilled to have more opportunity to step into leadership. And then it happened again. And they're like, by the end of that, it's just this idea of getting a little bit more space, right? Like getting some space around your beliefs, because we start to believe them as facts.
Yeah.
And they're not facts.
Well, I think that women innately, we think that we do it the best. Our way is the only way. And of course, it's the best way. And no one could possibly do it the way that we do it. And if they try, they're going to fail and it's going to suck, right? And so if we start a business, that business is our baby. Mm-hmm. That is a child. Totally. And we love it more than anything. So we're not just going to leave it with Sally because she's going to suck and mess it up. So and we fully believe that. Like there's no convincing us otherwise until, I would imagine, I feel like you're either forced to take the jump.
Correct.
Something happens.
Correct.
Like something has to happen where either your husband's like, look, we're getting divorced because I need a wife and you're not here. Or something happens with the child or whatever the situation. But something probably bad would have to be the catalyst to make you finally do this, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the change equation, as we talk about, is like either the pain is so great that it shifts you.
Yeah.
Women are really strong.
Yep.
They can take
put
a
up
lot of pain.
Yes.
Typically, we don't see that it's just the pain, right? Like sometimes that happens. Like sometimes you know you hit the bottom.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's awful.
Yeah.
It's really hard to make the shift without also having a vision that's pulling you in, right? So you said that, like the pulling you in. And so it's both things. It's also becoming really aware of how the pain is serving you. Like you're not staying in pain because it's like there's nothing good about it, right?
Right.
There's situations like and that's part of the work is like, oh, I'm burnt out. I don't like this. Well, what's the benefit of that to you? The benefit is I get to feel good that I have this big brand.
Yeah.
There's my ego feels really
of ego.
served, right? And until you start to just actually face that and become really aware of like, oh, turns out I'm doing that in this other place with my family and I'm doing this at work, you know, it's never going to change. And so part of it, the step one is just, can you become aware
Yeah.
of all that that's sort of keeping you in it?
But you hit on this. This is a really interesting question to me because, you know, you look at the average age of a real estate agent, 54, 55. A lot of women,
Yeah.
like we've been talking about, like this is a hot topic over the next 10 years
Yeah.
is like, how are all these wildly successful women going to think about their own transitions? And I think historically in real estate, it's been there's been like, you know, I'm going to get my business in order. I'm going to go out and make sure it's valued correctly. I'm going to go shop it. I'm going to sell it. It's like this very like,
It's like a rigid
kind of
exit
rigid,
strategy.
Yeah.
very specific way of looking at things.
Yeah.
And I think there are all kinds of models that can work in really cool ways that frankly might be much more appropriate
Yeah.
for a lot of these women who are making shifts. And
Yeah.
so, but the work is not just the business. The work is what we've been talking
Right.
about is here. Like, how are you going to do that work so that you can make good choices and end up in a place you want to be?
Yeah.
you know?
And believe that like you can do it again. I mean, there's this belief
right.
that we've heard of, you know, these women who are wildly successful and for some reason, you know, they want the next chapter. And some of them even have these wonderful visions of what the next chapter could be, completely outside of real estate, right? And yet there's this really looming fear of like, oh, well, what if I fail? And oh my God, I'm going to be like
Yes.
so poor and
Yeah.
homeless. I mean, they go down the like
Yes.
doom spiral, you know?
Yes.
And you're like,
And they have plenty of money.
you just, you know, right? Like you just
money.
built a crazy successful business.
Yeah.
Right.
Of course you can do this again. Of
Yeah.
course you have the skills to, you know,
Do whatever.
be successful in whatever you're going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, the biggest hurdle that we have is our own selves.
Correct.
And our mindset.
100%.
This reminds me of, have you guys ever read, Ed Milet wrote a book called The Power of One More. And he talks about how we all have our own internal thermostats.
Correct.
And that we can achieve above that, but we'll always bring ourselves back, right?
Upper limiting.
Yeah,
upper limits.
which is just, I think about that concept a lot. And the only way you can really raise your thermostat or your temperature is by doing the work, right?
It's by doing the work. And then when it happens, so we like to ask each other, so when great things happen in your life, which do happen, right? We launched the Helm. I called Danielle and I said, hey, what's your upper limit plan? So what is your plan when things go really well so that you actually start to raise the floor, right? So you can actually make this the new ground. And you don't just go all the way back down, right? And it's a
Yes.
grounding exercise of like just having a place to put all that energy and going for a walk, connecting with a good friend, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe it's exercising. Otherwise, what happens is you bring yourself down, back down to this place that feels safe. And you do it, like for me, it shows up in, I'm going to pick a fight with my husband. Or maybe I'm going to get sick.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to get like bogged down in something I just don't like to do, right? And then you're like, wow, and I was feeling so great yesterday. What happened?
Yeah.
Oh, you did that. Like
Yeah.
I actually did that to myself.
Yeah.
Right. So it's exactly, you're spot on. Jess.
Unconsciously.
Yeah. So Danielle, there's a lot of ego in real estate. So a lot of brand and flash and, you know, and it's also, like we talked about earlier, very male dominated in terms of the wanting to show themselves as I can help other people around me, right? The team leads and things like that. I'm curious to hear your opinion with your background about clear cooperation and what's really going on with all the varying components of the evolution of the industry.
I mean, it's funny. There's so many layers to this. There are so many layers. And I think that the media and certain leaders are trying to distill this down to just a single soundbite so everyone can understand it or make it easy or pick a side. And the reality is that, first of all of those people have their own motivations around this. No matter what side you're on in this discussion, there is financial implications for the people who have these opinions. And I think what's getting lost is who's representing the homeowner, the consumer. I don't see that happening right now as much as I'd like. I think that there's a lot of fear around, who's going to own the data and whose data is it, and can the MLSs keep up, and what should they do? Listen, things should change. Like we've talked about this, like always there's an opportunity for us to get better. But I think that we're losing the thread in the heated debates that are happening on stages and in articles around like, well, what's best for the homeowner?
Agreed. It's very self-serving,
yes.
Right? Like the industry is moving to self-serving, pure capitalism, like the food industry or healthcare, where it's all about money and it's not about the needs of the consumer. It's really interesting.
It is interesting because I think there's a lot of debate in business around like if you orient around your consumer, you win, right? Yeah. Because ultimately that's who your buyer is. But in real estate, it's a little more complicated. You don't certainly own your customer and say it the same way. There is kind of a constellation that sits around homeowners. And so I think we're just losing that thread completely. And I think it would be such a shame to orchestrate solutions to this conversation that are all or nothing. We were talking earlier about this, like this idea of and is really important here. Yeah. You can continue to protect the homeowner and you can also, like at large, but you can also protect maybe people who don't want their homes listed in the MLS. Like, I think you can do both. We do not need these solutions that are either you're on team X or you're on team Y. Yes. What we need are solutions that are a little bit more nuanced in order for this to do the thing that we need it to do.
Yeah. If they're going to regulate it, why wouldn't they just say you have to have this conversation with every consumer, just like you do with your compensation, and say, do you want us to put this on all of these MLSs, or do you want to keep this closed? It's totally up to you. Why can't it just be that simple?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of discussion around the pre-sale. There have been some brokerages who've been really active in that, pre-market marketing and and they want that to their advantage, for the people who choose to work with their agents. But again, there's nuance. Like, I actually do believe in pre-marketing. We come from the world of marketing outside of real estate, and that would be insane to not do any kind of pre-marketing for something. So, should there be some of that? Absolutely, there should be some of that. But again, it's like either it is or it isn't. Yeah. You either do it or you don't. It's like, no, why can't we have some more nuance in this? You know? So
I think that the consumer should be the one in the buyer's seat. It's their asset that they're selling. They're choosing an agent. Let them make that decision.
Yes. And I would say that what we have to be careful of is making sure we're educating the consumer on the value of that. Yeah. Because I think some people are weaponizing that a little bit. Yeah, what you just said, that statement, it's like, well, the consumer, they get to decide. It's like, well, but the consumer also doesn't fully understand.
That's fair.
The implications. So it's like if I'm listing my house, like I may want to decide, whether I want it in there or not. But if I'm buying a house, if I'm on the other side of that transaction, what do I want? Yeah. Oh, I actually want all that data in the market so that I can make better choices, so that we understand price strategy and what we, to me, if you start to segment this stuff out, it gets a little risky. So I think you have to look at both sides.
Yeah, I never looked at it from the seller or the buyer perspective.
Right. Yeah. And I think that the industry is centralizing around, are focusing on the sell side, which I totally get. But I mean, we've got a crisis around homeownership in this country, and I think we should be paying close attention to our buyers, as much to our buyers as we are to our sellers. And so what kind of systems are we making sure that we safeguard to make sure that everybody can participate, equally?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on affordability? Like, what do you think the solution is?
What do you think?
I think rates have to come down, incomes have to go up, or prices have to go down.
Yeah, I mean, those are some, that's like
Basic economic principles.
And how
But
do you
I think
get there?
all of those are very complicated.
Exactly, that's the problem.
And they're all interconnected.
That's the other thing. These are all systems that we live in. There's not any one, these things have to move together. And that's what makes it so hard. There's not one answer.
Yeah.
They have to. But I will tell you, the best way for us to figure this out, to solve these problems, is to actually just talk about them.
Collaborate.
And collaborate. Not come out swinging the bat saying this is the answer.
Yes.
Like, we actually really need to sit down and have more of these conversations. I think the industry is so sensationalized around sound bites that there's just not a lot of good dialogue that's happening
true.
around this, you know?
And adding more active listening.
Yes.
Actually deeply listening, not so that you can defend or fix or personalize, but so that you can understand.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because I don't think there's any of that. I mean, there's a lot of talking and there's a lot of telling and a lot of explaining and a lot of POVing, right?
Yeah.
And then there's not a lot of listening. It's like nobody's stopping to say, well, wait a minute. Did I just hear you say XYZ? Mm-hmm. Oh, is that right? Right? Yeah. Like, there's just, and that's happening in all parts of our world, I think. But yeah.
So how do we find you online? Like, what's the best way to connect with the two of you and the Helm?
You should definitely go to the-helm.com. That's the best place. You can also find us on Instagram. Our handle's Wisdom from the Helm.
Okay.
And we have an amazing newsletter that we send out every 2 weeks that is just full of awesome female-forward perspectives on the industry and some of the concepts that we've been talking about from a conscious leadership perspective. And we just love to hype awesome women in there. So, just keeping the good vibes going. So those are the ways you can find us.
Great. Mm-hmm. Thank you for being here, ladies.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.